Hello, and welcome to the lesson on claims and arguments. The big question that we'll be looking at today is, what are the main parts of a persuasive piece of writing? Today's focus, we will be looking at author's arguments, otherwise known as claims. We will be looking at whether claims are valid or invalid, sound or unsound, and we will also take a quick look at deductive and inductive reasoning. Let's start off with the definition. A claim is the main argument of a piece of persuasive writing. A claim is when an author says something that may or may not be true. It is important to remember that a claim can be argued. So let's look at a few examples. Which of the below would you consider a claim? Here's our first example. Snow falls from the sky in winter. Here's a hint. If it can be argued, it is a claim. If it is a fact or common sense, it would not be considered a claim. So is snow falls from the sky in winter, can that be considered a claim? Yes or no? If you said no, then you're right, because it is a fact that snow falls from the sky in winter. It may not fall from the sky where you are, however, it is a fact that snow does fall from the sky during the winter. Here's the second one. Some people do not belong in yoga pants. Okay, if you said this is a claim, you are right, because there are people of varying opinions out there. Some people believe that anybody should be able to wear yoga pants. So this is considered a claim. Red cars get pulled over more by the police than other cars. This is, in fact, not a claim. If you were to look at the actual statistics, you would find that red cars do, in fact, get pulled over more by the police than any other color car. Let's look at our fourth one. Sports players should not be paid huge salaries just for playing a sport. Is this a claim or not? This, in fact, is a claim. And some people would argue that sports players should not be paid huge salaries, while those sports players and others who represent them and work for them and work with them probably believe the sports players are making a fair amount of money for what they do. This is why it's a claim. It can be argued. Last one, the world would be a better place if the government would stop regulating the public's use of weapons. Is this a claim or not? Again, this is a fact, a statement that could be argued by people of varying viewpoints. So this would be considered a claim. After we decide whether or not something is a claim or establish the claim of a piece, the next thing we need to do is look at whether the claim or the argument is valid or invalid. First thing we need to do is look at the definition of a premise. A premise is simply one piece of evidence being presented in an article. So, looking at valid as a definition, an argument is valid if and only if it is necessary that all of the premises are true. Then the conclusion is true. If all the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. So a valid argument is where you have two premises and the result, the conclusion, must also be true. So here's an example. Mrs. Gaylord likes caramel. Mrs. Gaylord likes chocolate. You put those two premises together and you get Mrs. Gaylord likes Milky Ways. This is, in fact, a valid argument. Remember, for valid claims, it is impossible that all the premises are true and the conclusion to be false. Okay, if there's any way that that conclusion may be false, then it would in fact be an invalid argument. And here's the definition for that. An invalid argument is one that is not valid. We can test for invalidity by assuming that all the premises are true and seeing whether it's still possible for the conclusion to be false. If this is possible, the argument is in fact invalid. So again, you're taking two true premises, but if the conclusion is not true or not so, then that would be an invalid conclusion. So it's really important to look at your premises and make sure that they are both true and then decide whether or not the conclusion is possible or not. So here we have another example. Mrs. Gaylord likes cake. This is true. Mrs. Gaylord likes chocolate. This again is true. Mrs. Gaylord likes chocolate cake. Can this be false? If it can be false that Mrs. Gaylord actually does not like chocolate cake, even though she likes cake and likes chocolate, it would be that the argument is invalid. And actually, it's true. Mrs. Gaylord does not like chocolate cake. Mrs. Gaylord is not even a huge fan of cake, but I'll eat some. I prefer things like cheesecake. And I do, of course, love my chocolate, but I don't like chocolate cake. I find it very dry for some reason. So be careful when making assumptions. Make sure, again, that your conclusion is and must be true, while your premises are true as well. So look at sound and unsound arguments. Sound. An argument is sound if and only if it is valid and contains only true premises. An unsound argument is one that is not sound. An argument that may seem valid but has some false premises is unsound. Let's look at the examples given here. Example number 1. This is an example of a sound argument. All mammals have lungs. All rabbits are mammals. Conclusion is all rabbits have lungs. Here all of the premises are true and the argument is valid. Hence, it is a sound argument. Let's look at example number 2, something that is unsound. All insects have 6 or more legs and 3 body sections. Spiders have 8 legs. Conclusion, spiders are insects. Hence, here the arguments seem valid, but since spiders do not fit all criteria, the argument is unsound. In fact, spiders do not have 3 body sections. Generally, spiders only have 2. So the argument and the premises seem true. The first premise is true. The second one is true as well, but the conclusion is not true. So this would make it an unsound argument. So let's talk really quickly about deductive and inductive arguments. A deductive argument is a type of reasoning which goes from general to specific. Deductive reasoning is based on premises, and if the premises are true, then the reasoning will be valid. Inductive refers to reasoning that takes specific information and makes a broader generalization that is considered probable, allowing for the fact that the conclusion may not be accurate. In other words, a deductive reasoning is when you're looking at generalizations made about a group of people or objects, and then you take those generalizations and you make very specific claims about an object or a person. Inductive is when you look at one example of an object or person and then make broad generalizations about that group or of objects or people. Okay, so deductive is going from broad to specific, whereas inductive goes from specific to broad. Let's take a look at some deductive argument examples. Okay, so the first one, in mathematics, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Also known as the transference theory, I believe. Most of you should be familiar with that. So we're taking 2 broader ideas and bringing them down into a specific. Second one, all fruits grow on trees. All apples are fruits. Therefore, all apples must grow on trees. You're going from all fruits just to apples, and then making that specific claim about apples based on that generalization about all fruits. Third one, all bachelors are single. William is a bachelor. Hence, William is single. Again, you take that big group of bachelors, that single person William, and making a generalization about William based on the broad generalization about all bachelors. Fourth one, since all humans are mortal and I am human, then I am mortal. It seems pretty easy, right? All mammals have kidneys. All dolphins are mammals. Therefore, all dolphins have kidneys. Does this seem to make sense to you guys? Should we look at one more? Here we go. Since all squares are rectangles and all rectangles have 4 sides, all squares have 4 sides. Can you see that this one kind of reversed it? We were talking about the squares being specific rectangles and then all rectangles having 4 sides. The generalization is over here, the specific is here, but then your claim in the end that all squares have 4 sides still brings it down to a very specific example of those squares having 4 sides. So even if you reverse the order, it's still a deductive argument. Let's take a look at some inductive examples. Can you pick out the sound arguments in the inductive examples? Bob is showing a big diamond ring to his friend Larry. Bob has told Larry that he's going to marry Joan. Bob has bought the diamond ring to give to Joe. Which one of these sentences is the argument in this example? Did you get Bob has bought the diamond ring to give to Joan? If you did, that's right, because we have 2 specific pieces of evidence here, that he's showing a diamond ring to Larry and he's told Larry that he's going to marry Joan. Putting those 2 things together, We get the idea that he's going to give the ring to Joan. Here's another one. The chair in the living room is red. The chair in the dining room is red. The chair in the bedroom is red. All chairs in the house are red. Can you find the argument? Is it sound? If you said that the argument is that all chairs in the house are red, you're right there. If you said that it's unsound, you're absolutely right again, because there's no proof that every chair in the house is red just because 3 of the chairs are. This is not a sound argument because the answer, the argument, the conclusion is not necessarily true. Here's another one. All cats that you have observed purr. Therefore, every cat must purr. Is this sound? Is it possible that there are some cats out there that don't purr? Then you're probably right. This is not a sound argument. In fact, there are some cats out there that do not purr. Last one. 2/3 of the students at this college receive student aid. Therefore, 2/3 of all college students receive student aid. The argument here is the last sentence. Therefore, 2/3 of all college students receive student aid. If you said that that was unsound, then you're right. Because in fact, just because that's the statistic at one college does not mean that's the statistic at all colleges. Here's an excerpt. Give this a read over and then answer the question here. Which best describes the student's reasoning? The statements employ valid reasoning, the statements employ sound reasoning, the statements employ deductive reasoning, or the statements employ inductive reasoning. Thank you for watching the lesson on persuasive arguments. Today we went over claims, premises, validity, and soundness. Please don't leave confused. If you have questions about this lesson, write them down and bring them back to your teacher. Have a great day.